Since the beloved release of Final Fantasy VII back on the PlayStation 1 in 1997, we've all hoped for what Final Fantasy VII could look like in modern day graphics. Back on the PlayStation 3, we saw a technical sort of demo of the very opening of this game, just to showcase the visual capabilities of the PlayStation 3, but that left us wanting more, really wanting a remake of the entire game. And it wasn't until E3 2015 when our calls were answered and we got the announcement of Final Fantasy VII Remake. How's it going everyone? Tazen here and welcome to my review of Final Fantasy VII Remake's first part. And starting off, I won't be going through any spoilers in this review. I will be talking about this all from the perspective of how I feel about the game without giving away any story perspective. So if there is any footage in this video as well, it will all be from trailers and more specifically earlier trailers than the later ones. So in honesty, I love this game. This game is literally phenomenal to me. Now it took me all up about 60 hours to complete. There is quite a lot in this game. So this is one of those games where I went in wondering like, will it go quicker than I think it might? Just because that was the experience I had with Final Fantasy XV and with Kingdom Hearts 3. But I had the opposite experience with this. It was literally the moment where I thought I was getting to the end, then it kept going. And then I thought, okay, I'm gonna finish this PlayStation. And then it kept going and going and going, and it was literally non-stop. And honestly, the experience I had within that 60 hours of my single playthrough was completely enriched with story from beginning to end. It never once felt like anything was being filled out with just running around the world and doing things and so on, as you may expect with other games like Kingdom Hearts, where you do have those several hours within every world where you were going around just taking down enemies, leveling up and so on, which is fun in its own right. But this felt like it was telling a story throughout the entire experience, almost cinematic in a way. And it did remind me of the recent PlayStation 4 God of War in ways. And honestly, it never faltered from beginning to end. It never felt like to a point where it just started rushing it all the way out and it was over. It really felt like this was a polished experience. And I need to note for anyone who hasn't played this, or even anyone who played this and did pick up on it, this game is playable without any day one patch whatsoever. That currently, as of the time of this recording, there is no patch for this game. It all plays off version 1, and I think this is amazing in regards to game preservation and the future of this game right here. You know, it's all there on the disc, and if they do add any patches later on, maybe that will only just enhance the experience even more. But for now, there were no graphical bugs, glitches, anything. It all felt like a complete package. Going on to the story in terms of how they've remade this, and naturally without giving away spoilers, everything feels like what is there in the original game. They've really recreated and reimagined it in a way that feels very fitting to the original. And then on top of that, they've gone the extra step and added brand new additions that also feel like they are just naturally a part of the story that we originally played. Just being able to flesh out bits that previously didn't exist, but again, they still complement the story as a whole. And then there are other parts that completely tell new aspects of the story that really make us think more about, wow, where's this story going? You know, how much more are they going to add? How different could it be? And all in ways that really makes it feel like a fresh experience, as well as a returning experience for those who played the original game. So I very much love that, and I just very much love that even the way it's visually presented to you in terms of the direction of the characters when you're going through cutscenes, it all feels quite natural. They've got this awesome aspect of being able to quite easily fit from the gameplay into a cinematic and then transition out in a natural way, where sometimes they do use single camera shots and it gives it a really cool feel, and other times they don't use that. And honestly, it felt really nice to me. From a combat perspective, it was great to see this take on more of an action combat perspective, at least very much in comparison to the original, which was a turn-based with an active time-based system, I should say. Now, in regards to what they've done with the command menu, is a really fantastic way to blend and necessarily merge turn-based with this real-time action. You can assign certain commands to shortcuts, so you've got 4 shortcuts you can use for the cross, square, triangle, and circle buttons. But again, there are other ways you can play, and it's very flexible to what fits for you. And then naturally they've even got the classic mode difficulty if you wish to have it in a way where you're not necessarily controlling the movement of the character. But all in all, the way that they merged materia into it, which was really much the unique standout aspect of the original game's combat. You know, there are lots of turn-based combat games and they all can have a unique aspect to them. Materia was that for the original game. They've really incorporated it well into this game. You can tell that it is a good introduction to materia, and that for the next parts they can really expand upon that. There were some things in this where I was like, maybe they could add more ability enhancing materia, and what I mean by that is something you see akin to Kingdom Hearts, whether it's some form of added hits when you're in the air or other things like that, you know, a lengthier dash. Now they may not even go down that route with this game, and nor do they need to, because the materia at its core was focusing on those that we saw in the original. You have your magic, you have your elemental linked materia, you have a lot of other materia that is very much related to abilities and command abilities as opposed to movement abilities. There are some movement abilities like a parry and so on, and I think they fit nicely, but I can just tell that these can all be fleshed out much more in the next game if they choose to, and it will make it feel like it's just expanding upon the materia system even more without feeling like this one in this part is bare bones, because it's not at all. It gives you quite an awesome experience with it. Now, in terms of the aerial combat, that's something I want to note because it is interesting. So your characters are not able to jump in this game, and in the previous recent action combat games we've seen from the same team, I should say, or at least from Tetsuya Nomura and so on, with Kingdom Hearts 3 and, you know, even Final Fantasy 15 with Tabata and so on, you know, Kingdom Hearts 3 is sort of their swan song in terms of action RPG combat, and Final Fantasy 15 was sort of an entry into action combat for a mainline Final Fantasy series. We have seen it with others like Final Fantasy Type 0 and so on, but the jump never felt right in FF15, and Kingdom Hearts 3, it can feel good in combat, but just running around the platforming, sometimes it can feel a little bit odd whether it doesn't jump in time when you get to the edge of the ledge, and that can all come down to timing. But in this, they've turned away from that. It gives a more grounded feel. So say you are attacking an enemy in the air and you're a melee based character like Cloud or Tifa, they actually naturally and quite seamlessly go into the air to start attacking those enemies. The thing is, there's not really much complexity in that. You really just do like a 3 or several hit combo and that's it. It will be great if they could expand upon your commands to have certain commands for the melee based characters be able to be used while you're in the air, because there are some of Tifa's abilities where I felt like they could definitely be usable in the air, but when you activate them while you're in the air, it waits till she gets back to the ground, then she does it. So you naturally really can't do serious damage to enemies in the air without strategizing and going to characters like Barret and using the gun or using magic and so on, like with Aerith, and even a magic you equip to certain characters. But it will just be cool to have that little bit extra there. You know, I'd love to see something like that. And again, you know, even if they add a materia where maybe you can just do an extra several hits in the air or so on. But I digress. It still feels really good, and at least it gives you the possibilities to be able to strategize and switch characters and think not just creatively but intelligently, and I really like that about this. Visually, the game is very beautiful, particularly the character models for the main characters. You do see quite a few NPCs where you can tell it's the same NPC character model just reused. I really love though that all the NPCs in the world, they gave life to Midgar, because every time you walk past them, you'll just hear them conversing, and you don't need to, or you don't actually go up to them and press triangle to hear what they say. They just naturally start talking. It's interesting because some of the things you hear some of them say can be quite emotional, can teach you a bit about the world, even just make it feel like you're walking around a world that feels lived in and unique in every different place you go to. But, you know, I would say that visually there are some parts in the game, more so background textures and stuff, where it almost looks like they're PS3 visuals. But again, this is just certain little things and certain little textures and details And mind you, you know, overall, I can just say that like pretty much the majority of everything I saw looks stunning and really beyond what I thought it would look like. But there are just some little bits there where I'm like, you know, it's interesting. But again, you know, they were pressed for data too. Like this is almost 100 gigabytes, so that's insane. But who knows whether, you know, whether there's like the PlayStation 5 enhancement to it, whether that be a patch or re-releasing this when the others come out, or you know, when we have the complete all the installments, they might do a bundled release that may have some form of, you know, visual enhancements there. But again, this is really nitpicking. And then I guess the last bit to talk about with this is the music. The music is really brilliant. And I'm going to say this is specifically from the perspective of someone who's played the original and heard the music in that, because there were tracks that I remembered and I was like, I wonder when I'll hear, you know, if I'll hear that track in some form. And then I would, but it wasn't just like a you know, a remaster of an audio track. Not that you would expect a remaster with a lot of those MIDI tracks and stuff, but you know, sort of like a close or very faithful reimagining. They would sometimes do that, and you're like, oh, they've done it really well. And there were other times where they would just take parts of a song and overlay it with a, you know, a completely new orchestral piece, and it really created new life because you can hear something new, yet, you know, with the same chords and same melodies from those original songs. It was just phenomenal. And then you go into all the new music, and it was really something of a spectacle. And it was a nod to music from, you know, various parts of the compilation, things like Advent Children, and even visually there were lots of things that, you know, just gave me Advent Children vibes, specifically in the action side of things. And musically, the heavy metal and so on. Like it really felt like something that took me to another place when I was playing this. And why that is a big thing for me is because I was going into this with, you know, somewhat of preconceived notions, because I played the original story its entirety. So because of that, you can become somewhat, I don't want to say skeptical, but cautious, maybe concerned going into it, how they will handle, change, enhance certain parts of the story. And it makes you constantly think about that, you know, like, oh, where they're going here and there. But there was, like, before I knew it, it was just taking me on this journey, essentially, where I started not having those thoughts at the front of my mind, because I was learning about something in a very cinematic and a very emotional way. And it was only after experiencing those certain story parts where I was just like, wow, okay. Then I thought back to the original game and how they did some of those things, and really, it really sold the show for me. So let me know what you thought. You know, this is something that I've spent, you know, 4 to 5 weeks playing, so I really took my time going through it. But anyways, I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts. Take care, everybody. Stay safe. And until next video, stay spot on.